our handlers were the same handlers for the British show. And the British show was airing. So we were shooting and we go back to our hotel and watch the British show. And we're like, why are they so calm? No one is freaking out. No one is in the corner crying. And they were like, oh, no, they were.
Oh, really?
It's just, it didn't make the final cut.
Hey, it's Dan Souza, and I'm here with my ATK co-host, Morgan Bolling, executive editor for Cook's Country, and we are here in the test kitchen. Morgan, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you, Dan?
Good. I feel like it was hard to pull you out of the kitchen today.
Yeah, there was a lot of kitchen work today. I just came from a tasting of salted caramel apple pie bars and then roasted garlic, so I apologize for that you have to sit next to me right now.
In what order did you have to try those?
Actually, that order. So salted caramel apple pie bars, then roasted garlic. I know. I did wash it down with more apple pie bar, so it's kind of a sandwich.
You did?
Yeah.
That does not sound like a great sandwich, to be honest. So
That's okay.
But I think this is interesting. I think most people, when they hear about what we do in the test kitchen and we're trying recipes all day long, it sounds just like pure dream. And I'm not going to be the one to like complain about it. It is really, really wonderful. But there are times where you do what you just did, where you have to try something really sweet next to something really savory, things that don't always go together. So how many things did you try today in the test kitchen?
I think I've probably been to 12 tastings today.
12.
Yeah, there's a
Full dozen.
a full dozen. Yeah, yeah.
Can you rattle off a few of them?
Okay, let's see how many I can get. Salted caramel apple pie bar. Salted caramel apple, well, there was one. Then there was roasted garlic. Then there was dipping oil with roasted garlic. Then there was roasted garlic in like vegetable oil. There was a cookie cake for one of my coworkers' birthdays, so I don't know if that counts, but I'm counting that in the list.
Yep.
Let's see. There was chicken and rice with like for a one-pan meal. There was a jalapeno popper mac and cheese. There was duck breast in an Instant Pot. There was duck breast in an Instant Pot again. Oh, I'm missing one. I can like picture being in the kitchen and seeing what it is.
So I think that's pretty good. It's okay that you're missing a couple. So two things. One, you can hear pans banging behind us because we really are in the test kitchen.
Yeah.
So that's probably going to happen from time to time. But that's what I like about this podcast. We're like really in it. That's an amazing lineup. First of all, that's an amazing lineup of food. That sounds like really fun to eat. So can you talk to me a little bit about, you've been at the test kitchen now for over a decade in the kitchen doing this sort of development and tasting. Can you take us in the test kitchen? Like, what is it actually like when you're going to one of these tastings? Because not everyone gets to experience it, but you do a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can break down the salted caramel apple pie bars is a fun one. We will start by doing a 5 recipe test and then narrowing in from that. But even just like a day-to-day tasting is like today Mark was working on these. He had already narrowed in on the crust and the apples. So he's doing a test just to compare store-bought caramel sauces. He's using store-bought caramel sauce, which is like, I guess like in Cook's Country, that feels more common for what we would do.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
But he is doing like Smucker's versus Stonewall Kitchen just to see how they perform differently to make sure that they behave the same.
Yeah.
So we go in, we each try them. We have no idea what the variable is, except our food editor knows what they are, but and Mark. But then we'll try them next to each other. We'll say if we have a preference, and then kind of we'll sometimes like guess what's going on. But then we'll talk about what the differences are. Like a lot of people like the version with Stonewall Kitchen better for the flavor, but the Smucker's one actually did have some of that like nostalgic sweetness. Like it was a little sweeter, so I actually picked that one, which I'm like, so we talk about what the differences are. And then for this is really just to see if we can say you can use either in the recipe, which you can, and we can give people guidance. But it's so detailed and so minute. Like we've done tests for like a 1/4 teaspoon of salt before, and we'll like be like, which one do you like better? Are they seasoned
that's
enough?
sort of side by side.
Yeah.
So I love it. So we're talking about like 10 people. We have these like silver tables in there, right? So you're standing around that, tasting them, kind of go off to your corner, try it, come back and discuss it. And
everyone's silent for a few minutes because you want to like make sure you can like taste it and do it without bias.
Without bias, yeah, which I think is super important. And I love that you're testing it, not just to say like, okay, we're only going to go with this brand or this brand, but actually like, does it work with both of them? And then you sort of build that into the head note, into the recipe.
Exactly.
I think that's something that not everyone realizes is we spend like weeks on these recipes, and some of the tests are really fun and exciting where you're like, let's try this out of the box idea. But some of it is that sort of iterative over and over testing to say like, does this work better? Does this work? The really hands-on like practical stuff that home cooks really need. So when you left the room, I actually got to try one of the bars and it was so good. It's got this like super buttery, very short but a little bit of chew crust to the bottom. And I want to dig in on that. And then this apple layer, and then sort of a crumble on top. The combination is really, really good. So is that recipe like done? That seems like a finished recipe to me, but maybe it's not.
It's almost done.
Okay.
So we went down, it's funny because we thought it was done. And then we went down this rabbit hole today with these different brands of, is it caramelly enough? Like if we're calling it salted caramel apple pie bar, then does it have enough caramel punch going on? And I agree. Like we spent a lot of time on the crust, getting it sturdy enough. The apples, you actually don't have to pre-cook them, which is so nice. Like it's just
that's
easier.
great. Yeah.
And then we're using Granny Smith, so it's like really punchy and tart and you taste it. And then there's that crumble layer. But yeah, we were like, can you tell it's caramel? So we were debating if you should just drizzle with more caramel. I mean, you can, but it's like nuanced now. And we're like, should you really push it over the flavor cliff of caramel flavor?
So you're in sort of the final days of it and getting it like right there. Yeah.
Well, we actually told Mark he was done, and then we're like, well, actually, he might not be done.
Did you say that because you want him to make it again? And you want to have it tomorrow?
I mean, maybe. That would be great. No, I've actually had these caramel pie bars like 20 times now. I'm kind of like...
So you're good.
I could take a break.
Well, everyone in this room got to try them before, and it was like oohs and ahs. And I think like one interesting thing is like we try things side by side all the time and these really incremental changes. But when we're happy in that environment, we know that if you just make it and try it, you're going to totally love it. Yeah.
I like bring this sort of stuff home to like friends or anything like that. And they're like, this is amazing. I'm like, hold up, and it's going to be better.
Hold up, yeah. I remember when I first started as a test cook, this was many moons ago, I was coming from more of a restaurant environment and where I like never had the opportunity to like cook dinner. You know, you were always working, so you never had a chance to. So when I started, I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to work sort of a 9 to 5 schedule, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to cook dinner for myself. But the first 2 weeks, I remember just being overwhelmed by like the offering of food every day. So you go to these tastings, went to 12 today. I remember doing that. Plus like, oh, someone's got brownies over here and some roast chicken. And I would go home for the first 2 weeks so full that I was not cooking dinner. Yeah. And I had to like, I don't know, a month into it, say to myself, okay, I'm only going to try small portions of things so that I can like eat outside of here somewhere. Do you want to talk a little bit about like, so we make so much food, like we don't eat it all for those tastings. Like what happens to that food? This is a question I get so often from people when I tell them that I work here.
Yeah. So honestly, a lot of it gets eaten in a tasting, I do think, dependingly. But
if it's those bars,
if it's
sure.
the bars, yeah. But we also have a take-home fridge. So we have like a fridge in the center of our office that is meant so people on staff, because our staff's what, like 40-something cooks, I'd say?
Yeah, 45. I mean, yeah.
And then we have 200 people or so on staff. So we put packaged stuff up and put it in the take-home fridge. So people who work here in like marketing or design can go grab apple pie bars to take home to their family. So nothing gets wasted, which is good. And we're very good about composting, which I deeply appreciate here.
I agree. I think that combination means like very, very low food waste here. Yeah, and it's so funny. So the take-home fridge is a very real fridge in the office. It says take-home fridge on it. And it also has like these lettering and stickers that represent like what could be inside. Yeah. And there's things like French pork stew and like half a roast chicken and like
I'm trying to think
all
of like
these
the weirdest
oddball
thing I've like found in the take-home
mustard.
fridge.
Yeah, and exactly. There's a sort of like open it up and you've no idea what you're gonna get. A little bit of roulette.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hit the jackpot and sometimes
I know. Like I once got a frozen duck, but I'm trying to think. Like I've also gotten like fava. Well, and once I got frozen fava beans. But I feel like there's also like sometimes you get like a jar of jam with like 2 tablespoons left.
Yeah. I remember we had an intern for a while who was like going in and just grabbing like 3 things every day and then going home and try to like, I don't know, sort of challenge themselves to make something out of it, which I really loved. It was like creative and cutting down on food waste. But yeah, I love when people come into the test kitchen, touring them through, stopping by there, and then there's like this like awe and surprise when you open it up and see what happens inside there.
Exactly.
So my question for you is, are those bars going to end up in the take-home fridge today, or are they just eaten entirely in the test kitchen?
I think there are going to be a few left because we're making a 13 by 9 pan. So with 10 of us, I mean, we could do some work, but yeah, I think they'll go home to the take-home fridge. So I think people will get some.
Well, I'm going to make sure I stop by there.
If you need a little break, we could.
Yeah, I'm going to hit that take-home fridge. But before we do that, I have a wonderful guest that I want to bring into the test kitchen. Please welcome Vallery Lomas. Vallery, welcome to the test kitchen.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It is so great to have you here. I want to dig into your really interesting career and your baking expertise. But first, I want to pour you some tea. This is a long-standing tradition on the show where I like to try to choose a tea that matches my guest in some way. And so what I've chosen today is a Darjeeling First Flush. So this is a tea from India, and it is a black tea, but it is a first flush, meaning that it's picked in the spring, and it's treated a little bit differently than other teas, where it's less oxidized, it's less fermented, and you get these like really bright notes, but also tons of interesting, what I would call like baking flavors. So there's like a lot of times orange and almond and all these things, allspice. I don't want to put my finger on the scale too much, and you may not taste these, but I find them in there, and so I think it really connects to sort of your baking experience, and I want to see if you like it. It's also really bright and fun, and I find you to be very bright and fun.
Well, thank you. I am very excited to try this tea.
Mm-hmm.
So I have these little teacups here, and then I'll pour some into this glass cup here so we can see the color, and you can see that it's. I mean, I love this color.
Thank you.
Dan, do you have like a strategy for how long you steep your tea?
Yes, I do. So I think the biggest thing with tea for me is nailing the temperature. So this is a black tea. I like to brew it just off the boil. So 210 degrees, 208 degrees is really nice. And then I like to taste it a lot, because the amount of tea you have and the amount of water, it's going to change the steeping time. But taste it as you're going, just like you would with cooking. And then when it feels right, take the tea leaves out or pour the water off, so that you have the proper flavor. So this is got this kind of orange coppery color to it, but it's not super inky, but it has a ton of flavor. So let's give it a smell. And this is where I'm going to stop talking. I want to hear what you guys taste and smell.
Ooh, the smell's different than the taste to me.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like kind of zingy. Mm-hmm. It has this. It's very bright, and I got a little zing in the top of my mouth, which I liked.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I think some of this is power of suggestion, but I feel like I smelled almond, and then when I sip it, I'm like, orange zest. Like, it's like that, like, brightness, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it would be wonderful, like, if you steeped some cream with this tea and then you used it in a baking application. I feel like I don't see it very often, but I think it would go really well in that.
Yeah, I do love steeping things in cream and then making like ganaches out of them, to fill like macaroons or make a tart. So I do love the idea of like steeping in cream.
Yum. I'm like ice cream.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
I want ice cream.
All right, so maybe for your next steeping expedition, I'll give you
Okay.
some of this tea and you can use it.
I love that. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. So I want to dig into your background before you sort of got into the kitchen, because I find it really fascinating. I think you have made, in my mind, and this is probably judgmental, one of the greatest job swaps in the history of job swapping. So before you were baking, you were a lawyer for almost a decade?
Yeah, for 8 years. I practiced for 8 years.
Wow.
And then you made the move into baking. We want to talk a little bit more about that. You have a wonderful cookbook, Life is What You Bake It. And I love the title there, and I love the sentiment of the book. But I have to ask you, making a cookbook is really hard. Mm-hmm. You also went to law school. Mm-hmm. Which is harder?
I mean, I didn't like law school. I think it just kind of sucks, like, overall.
Yeah.
But making a cookbook, it's very challenging and it's very isolating, but it's so satisfying and rewarding. And I just remember, like, sitting at this cafe in Harlem where I would work on it and having to, like, dig back deep into the depths of my brain and get those food memories and feel those things and try to recreate those things. So I really found it very satisfying, though very challenging, because when I wrote this book, I was about a year out from making the switch and having won the Great American Baking Show. So I didn't have a lot of recipe writing experience, so that was very challenging. Whereas law school, it sucks, but you're, everyone's just on a little boat going downstream. It's like, get off if you can. Good luck. No, we're all on the boat.
Yeah.
We're just,
nobody's happy. So you're not looking around and seeing.
I mean, none of my friends were happy.
Yeah.
Like there were a couple of people. Oh, I love law school. I'm like, I don't trust those people. But I mean, it's a wonderful profession. It's just kind of it wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah. Oh, good tie back.
See what you did there.
Really good. Well, I think there's a nice tie-in there in terms of like food and advocacy. I know your book is very personal, and you've actually worked on a book here in America's Test Kitchen, along with Morgan over here, When Southern Women Cook. You contributed an essay to it. And can you talk a little bit about just like that process for you and what you get out of kind of advocacy through food?
Yeah. I mean, to me, food it has a story, it tells a story, and there's always people involved. I don't think you can, have food and take the people out of the food, whether it's the people who are growing and harvesting the food or cooking the food, distributing the food. So when, Tony and Morgan approached me about contributing to this book, it was such a wonderful way to think about. I wrote about cake mix, but I wrote about how it helped liberate women because we were kind of confined in many ways to the home sphere. And, anyone who does work for the home, it's not, the most glorious work. Like no one is really, our society, we value it, but we value it very differently than, work done outside of the home. So, I wrote about how Cake Mix kind of helped women not have to spend as much time in the kitchen. And as someone who loves to bake, and I love to bake cakes from scratch, and I learned from my grandmothers, it was really nice to know, like, we have a choice.
Yeah.
We can use Cake Mix or we can bake a cake from scratch. And it was nice that women had that choice then as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so nice because it gave this freedom to be like, you don't have to do it from scratch. And I think especially like in our industry, there is such a like, do everything from scratch and it's great and you can make really great stuff. But there was something freeing about including that essay in our book. And actually the reason we got that idea is because Vallery had written about it in Life is What You Bake It. And then we found it and we're like, this is great. And I think we reached out to you and we're like, hey, can you like expand on this a little more or like update it for When Southern Women Cook? Yeah, because you have a lot of essays like that throughout Life is What You Bake It.
Yeah. It was just really an opportunity for me to just kind of think and reflect about life and about, how I ended up where I was. And, I thought about the people whose shoulders I stand on, which would be, the women in my life, my mother, my grandmothers, my great grandmother, and on and on and on. So I can't separate food from those people. They fed me, they fed my family, and now I'm feeding my family. So.
That's really beautiful. And so you mentioned that you were working on your book, I think, in a cafe in Harlem.
Yeah.
You, New York, sort of your adoptive home. It's not where you grew up. You grew up down in New Orleans.
Yeah, I grew up in Baton Rouge.
In Baton Rouge.
Yeah, like about an hour west of New Orleans. A very great food place. A little bit different than New Orleans, but, my family, they were very connected to the land. They grew everything that they ate and they had for generations. So, all of my earliest memories were food memories in this little town in Prairieville that's kind of between New Orleans and Baton Rouge.
Prairieville. That's like, Central Casting couldn't have named the town better.
You literally could not. It was just such an idyllic place.
Yeah.
Like, you got there when you got to the 3 large oak trees, not a stoplight. You have to have those monuments or nature type monuments to know you even arrived. So,
well, that's really different than growing up in Boston. We would talk about like the Dunkin' Donuts on that corner, and then the one down the street. So you have the 3 oak trees. We have the
3 oak trees.
3 Dunkin' Donuts.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Vallery, we're so excited to have you here. And you're not just here to do this podcast today. You're here in a much bigger way for the ATK residency. You're going to spend a couple years with us working on great stuff. And you are actually just behind us. We've got this amazing kitchen with lights and cameras. And you were back there. And what were you working on?
So we were filming a recipe. It's a turkey sausage lasagna. And in many ways, I developed this recipe almost as like an ode to how my mother cooked lasagna. When you're growing up and you're eating your mother's cooking, you don't know that it's necessarily any different than what anyone else is eating. So when my mom made lasagna, she used ground turkey and cottage cheese. It was also the 90s, right? So
everything had cottage cheese.
Yeah, exactly. Right? But it was like a little bit like more health conscious version. Yeah. And then later I learned, like about ground beef and all of these other wonderful like cheeses like Parmesan. I've had lasagnas with cheddar. Like, don't knock it. It's delicious.
Sounds great.
Right. But I kind of wanted to jazz up a turkey cottage cheese lasagna recipe. So we added turkey sausage. We added some cracked fennel to bring out all of that like herbiness in the sausage. And I used cottage cheese that I combine with mozzarella and fontina, which is like really creamy, like really like.
Fontina's the best.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually like I took this like 90s healthy-ish version of turkey cottage cheese lasagna and I made like a modern like decadent
Yum.
turkey cottage cheese and more lasagna. It's very creamy, like
So good. I mean, so like I should have said at the top, we're like sitting in the aroma of this lasagna right now. Like it's just behind us right over there. So we're like bathing in it. I tasted it while it was in development. It is so good. It is so indulgent. I didn't realize the backstory of that sort of 90s beginning, but I connect to that so hard. I feel like I grew up, my mom's a wonderful baker. And she's a really good cook, but in the, growing up, it was fat was the enemy. And so so many things were low fat and carb was like, fine. We just had like pasta all the time.
right.
But as we progressed, that was like, oh, wait, there's this and there's this. And I feel like it's a kind of a very American experience to go have a version of it that you grew up with and then go try like, you go to an Italian restaurant that really makes the real deal version and it like blows your mind. And my culinary education was so many of those moments. Still loving what I grew up with, but that kind of evolution of it. Did you find in your like travel and kind of more life experience that has that really dictated how that recipe came to be?
Oh, absolutely. Like I remember when I first had lasagna, I'm not sure if I was like in Italy or at Italy, but it was, it was these like fresh.
That's like an ad for Italy right there.
I know, right?
It's so
Not
good. It's just
intentional,
like
right. But like, it was, fresh sheets of pasta and a bechamel sauce and all the layers were just so thin and they just melt in your mouth. And I was like, oh, like,
This is
wow,
what it
that's
can be.
good. And, so this, I would say it's kind of like somewhere in the middle, right? We're not making a bechamel sauce, but all of those cheeses coming together, it's just super creamy. And like, it is a bit like chunky, like there's diced tomatoes in the sauce. And there's, like chunks of that turkey sausage, but I think it works. And, we can enjoy different types of lasagna. Like not one is better than the other. So
Look, there's many days in the week. You can have a lasagna every day that's
I
different.
like that.
You like that?
Lasagna every day of the week. That's great.
why not? And I mean, I definitely think, I majored in French and I studied abroad in France a couple of times. And that's when I really saw food completely different from the food that I grew up with, like specifically about baking. Because I went to school in California, so that was also a very different food enlightenment education compared to South Louisiana, where everything is fried. But like, it's definitely those experiences where you're like, oh, like, pies. There are also tarts, like pies, like pecan pie. I love it, but it is very sweet.
Yeah.
And you go to France and you're eating, these very delicate, like absolutely gorgeous, little tarts and little pastries.
Little works of art, right?
Little works of
Yeah.
art.
Yeah.
And, you walk down the street and they just lure you in with the like smell of the croissants. And
Well, so I have a really important follow-up to that. You're talking about pies and tarts. What is the best fruit pie in your mind?
in my mind, the best.
In your
fruit
opinion,
pie-
yeah. What is the best fruit pie?
I mean, lemon.
Lemon, okay.
Lemon. I
Like a
am
lemon meringue?
I don't even need the meringue.
You just want the...
Like a lemon tart.
Yeah.
Well, when you say the best pie, are we including tarts?
I mean, look, you can go anywhere you
They're
want
so
with this.
similar.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna say lemon. Oh, I love sour.
Yeah, me
What
too.
kind of crust are you doing on your lemon tart or pie?
I mean, we could do like a short crust. Yeah, that works. I also like, you make a lemon curd and you can add some butter and make that lemon cream. Keep it really simple. You can do passion fruit.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, when you get your hands on fresh passion fruit, or order the passion fruit juice online if you can't find it elsewhere.
I think lemon curd, when I first tried lemon curd, I was younger. I had no idea what it was. It didn't make sense to me that it was like all of this wonderful lemon, but creamy and rich, and then there was eggs in it. I was like so confused by it, right? Like now it makes so much sense,
Right.
and I love it. I think this is from your book, but you're saying that like when life hands you lemons, make lemon curd.
Oh yeah,
I love that. I put that
great
on a
tie-in.
T-shirt. It's great. Yeah. But yeah, oh my God, I would love passion fruit, anything you turn into a curd, I'm a pretty big fan of. What about you? What's your favorite fruit pie?
Well, so it's so funny you say lemon. That's the one I learned to make at culinary school. I had to make, it was like, I still remember a level 3 class. You like passed it by making a lemon tart.
Oh,
so
really?
I have like nightmares about lemon tarts, but I do love them. But I'm like, I just can't.
It's been ruined for you a little bit.
A little bit. I feel like an apple pie, and particularly a Dutch apple pie with like the crumble topping is like, I feel like you can't beat it.
You can beat it, and you can beat it with strawberry rhubarb.
Wow, fighting words.
That is my favorite. Yeah, my mom's strawberry rhubarb pie. I love it. We've always had, my mom's a great gardener, and we've always had a big rhubarb situation in the garden. It's the first thing to come up. I like it with just plain too, but with strawberries, it's so good. That like tartness.
Yeah.
Are we all big tart fans?
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But your answer,
Acidity.
it's very like, Northeastern. Like, I don't even think I had rhubarb until maybe like 2018.
Really?
I think I saw people eating it on Instagram and I was like, okay.
I gotta try this.
And then, I went and bought some and I was like, oh, it is quite delicious.
So you like it now?
Yes, and I have made a strawberry rhubarb tart.
Okay.
I feel like the first time you like cook rhubarb though, you're like, it kind of looks like celery, but it's red. What do I do with this?
I forgot I'm hanging out with a couple Southerners.
Yeah.
Right?
Right? You're really showing,
I'm showing my
Massachusetts.
my Massachusettsian nature. Well, I think I'm gonna have to have my mom make a strawberry rhubarb pie. 'Cause she makes it the best, and we'll taste it together.
That sounds great.
Listen, I will be there.
You'll be there.
I'm
I
like, Mom
travel
cooking.
for food.
Yeah.
So Valerie, for your second recipe that you're working on with us, do you want to talk a little about that?
Sure. It is a crab and shrimp stew. And this is very much an homage to where I grew up in South Louisiana because there's a lot of crab and a lot of shrimp there, which is wonderful because, people like who are friends, they will go out shrimping and then they just bring you like 20 pounds of shrimp or something that's like quite absurd. So, you're always kind of looking for ways to celebrate, this type of stuff. So that was kind of the inspiration for the recipe. And I started with a roux, but it doesn't taste like gumbo because there's a good bit of tomato and it works really well. You get the sweetness from the crab and the shrimp just kind of adds to that, getting a melange of seafoods.
That
enjoy
French,
it.
that French overseas is coming
Yeah, I
in.
know.
Yeah.
Study abroad. I'm getting it now.
But, I wanted to make something that was weeknight friendly that you could make, no matter where you are in the country because, I'm not always in Louisiana, but I want to eat, and get those flavors and feel that like Creole Cajunness in a recipe. And, I have a 2-year-old, so like, hey, hungry, want to get dinner on the table. So, I took a few, I made the recipe a little bit more efficient, let's say that.
Yep.
So I purchased seafood stock. Of course, you can make your own, but I used seafood stock. And then I bought, the can of crab, the lump crab, and it works. Like you still get all the sweetness from that crab and all of those flavors, and it just comes together so quickly.
I love it. Well, so both of those recipes are available on americastestkitchen.com and our app, America's Test Kitchen. Both incredible. I really love them. I feel like you have a nice facility with, like what you're talking about, weeknight cooking, taking things that have all of the flavors of the original and kind of, just making them more approachable for kind of everyday cooking. Do you have a few strategies that you want to share around how you do it? And you have a 2-year-old now. Like, what are Valerie's like top 2 or 3 weeknight cooking strategies?
So I like to cook pretty simply, but I take full use of my pantry.
Okay.
So like, if you see a recipe with 15 ingredients, but like, 6 of them are like spices in my spice cabinet. I just think that's like such a great way. You just kind of open it up and do like a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon. You're going to get so much wonderful flavor without, all of the work of having to like, I don't know. You don't always need fresh thyme. Like you can use dry thyme, and I do use dry thyme.
Yeah, dry
right?
time's amazing. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. I do tend to go for fresh parsley, but so I think that's something that you're gonna see in a lot of my recipes, and that doesn't mean that I don't like slow food. I appreciate that very much, but girls got to eat.
Yeah, and feed her
feed
daughters.
people. Yes.
I'm like, does your daughter eat a lot of the food you make? Is she picky? Or is she
She definitely loves the food that I make because generally she's getting like roasted vegetables and steamed vegetables. So if she gets like crab and shrimp stew, this girl is like, yes. Holler.
Gosh,
yes.
I love
And she's
that.
2?
She's 2.
Oh my God, amazing. That's awesome
loves-
that she's like into it.
I know, I
she's
think that's
into
like
food.
hot dogs only at that phase. So I'm like, I respect her.
So normally we go into a third segment where we answer questions, but I actually have just one really big question for Vallery, and that is, what was it like being on the Great American Baking Show? It's a competition cooking show. Morgan and I have a little bit of experience from America's Test Kitchen: The Next Generation, but I don't think it's the same thing. We weren't competing on it.
Yeah, we were judging.
We were judging.
easier.
We were judging. And so if you've got anger about the judges, you can take it out on us.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what was that experience for you? And you won. We need to say that right off the bat. You won. So you made it to the top.
Yeah, since I won, I don't really have anger to take out on judges. But my goodness, it was like very intense. I think people watch the Great American Baking Show or the Great British Bake Off because it's the same show essentially.
Yeah.
The same judges. We filmed in the same location in London, and they think that like, oh, everyone looks so calm and happy, and it's like, no, it's just edited that way because that's the vibe of the
vibe they're
show.
going, really?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like reality TV, you hear about them editing to make it more dramatic, but maybe they edit this
Right.
to make it more.
Yeah, not in this instance. It's the opposite because when we were shooting, our handlers were the same handlers for the British show. And the British show was airing. So we were shooting and we go back to our hotel and watch the British show. And we're like, why are they so calm? No one is freaking out. No one is in the corner crying. And they were like, oh, no, they were.
Oh, really?
It's just, it didn't make the final cut. So, yeah, it was very intense. But it's nice that, like, I think it's a show people can watch and be like relaxed and calm.
Yeah, you don't get like your adrenaline up
Well,
watching.
not anymore. Now that I know what was happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, it was very, yeah.
It really was intense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I cried for like a day and a half straight after the gingerbread house
Oh my God.
thing, and mine collapsed, my gingerbread brownstone, which was literally like a box.
I do. So I love both shows. But it's funny because I do love how like kind of comforting they are from a competition perspective. They are some of the most comfort watches that you can have, I think. So it's really interesting to me that's like behind the scenes is not totally like that. The setting of expectation, I think, in that show was really interesting, where it's like, you're talking about what you want to make, and then there's the beautiful illustration of what it's going to look like. And that balance with actually seeing the real thing can be hilarious at times. Probably not hilarious for you behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Especially when the brownstone falls apart.
Right, exactly. No, like looking back, like it's, well, it's not comforting or relaxing for me to watch these shows anymore ever.
Yep.
But looking back, it is kind of hilarious. But,
Wait, so I have to ask you, this one question I always have when I'm watching it is like, why is it outside in a tent?
there is no good answer for that question.
I've never thought about that.
No? Like when it's like,
It is literally outside.
Honestly,
super hot
that
and they're
makes it so much
laminating
harder to
dough.
bake.
Like, yeah.
It is literally outside. The day we made macaron, it was like a thunderstorm, and it was all of this humidity, and it was like,
You're making meringue.
and it was like,
Maybe
are you
that's
setting us up
why.
to fail? And they were like, no, we promised. The producers, they promised. We're not setting you guys up to fail. It's like, but that is a great question. I don't think there's an answer, but I will say it is cool because the set is at Pinewood Studios in the garden. So they filmed like a lot of very memorable things there. And when we were
It
there,
is gorgeous. I
Yeah,
mean,
Yes,
it's
when
beautiful.
we were there, they
That's why.
were filming Star Wars.
Really?
Yeah, and you would see like the people walking around, like
Can you
with the
imagine
Star
seeing
Wars
like
crew
Darth
shirts
Vader
on.
walk behind you while
Not
you're
the
assembling
actors,
like
but
a
you see the
cake?
crew walking around. So it's like a very like cool historical setting. But you're outside, just like I don't know, just to like suffer. No.
Yeah, but it's like suffer in this gorgeous, lush green
Oh,
area.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
something so strange, but wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. There's a lot. This goes a lot deeper than I thought.
I know.
Oh yeah, it's pretty deep. So I would love to hear about your experience from the judging perspective. Did you feel like any anxieties about like what if we let the wrong person go? Or like what was that like? What were your challenges as a judge?
Okay, so I was only a guest judge, so I only had to do it one day, but it was so fun, except for eating like 12 samples of food twice in a day. But I wasn't super, I mean, it was hard. I feel like you do feel like you're impacting people's lives, and that feels complicated. Like I said, I only had to do it one day, so I kind of was like, it is what it is. Maybe I'm cold-hearted.
You were cold.
I was cold. I was like, let it go. No. What about you?
So for me, it's funny. Like I went into it thinking like I taste food constantly, you know, in the test kitchen, and I'm judgmental in a good critical way. Like I'm like, this needs this needs that. So I thought it'd be kind of easy in some way. But that first day, I sort of like fell in love with all of the contestants. You know, like people are coming in and like they're sharing so much about themselves. They're putting themselves on the line in this huge way. And I was just like, oh no, I really care about everyone so much that this is going to be really challenging. So in the early stages, you don't know folks as well, and so you let people go. It's sad, but it's not like crushing you. But when you get down to 5 people, 4 people, and they've all shared so much, I mean, we talk about like your signature dish and all of this, it gets very, very hard. But yeah, so I found it really, really challenging, super rewarding in a way that I didn't expect. And we actually took a lot of inspiration from the Great British Bake Off and the Great American Baking Show in terms of the vibe that we wanted. We wanted it to be really warm and friendly. I think we achieved that. And we also wanted it to be educational. You know, if someone came and presented a piece of salmon that was overcooked, gave us a chance to talk about the right temperature to cook it to or what brining is. And so I think we achieved that. But yeah, being a judge was a lot harder than I thought.
You guys picked a great winner.
We sure did, didn't we? Yeah, Antoinette is absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, an amazing experience for, I think, everyone involved. And even the folks that left, and I wonder if you experienced this on your show, even if they didn't win, they were like so happy to have been there and gotten that experience.
Yeah, I mean, my
Or no.
experience was a little
You're
bit
like,
different.
no.
There's so much more story here. We're going to have to do a part 2 of this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm down.
But I really want to try some of that lasagna, so I think we're going to have to cut this, and I'm going to go back there. But Vallery, thank you so much for joining us here on In the Test Kitchen. So excited that you're joining us for a couple of years to produce amazing content. If you want Vallery's recipes or any of the recipes we talked about today, americastestkitchen.com or the America's Test Kitchen app is the place to go. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.